Hi there, welcome to Stereoscope Podcast number 12. I'm Byron.
I'm Anthony.
I'm Sean.
All right, we're just gonna launch right into it. Oh, and we got little Kirby here hanging out with us today. We're just gonna launch right into it. All right, so Sean, you got some stuff for us today. What do you got?
Well, I just found out that the PlayStation VR 2 got a $150 price drop. It's been out for 2 years. It was $400. Now it was $500. Now it's
It was $550.
$550. Then now it's $399.
The PSVR 1 was slapped together, but the PlayStation 4 was still decently capable. The PlayStation 4 was definitely more performant than the Quest
But the PS4
when it launched. So what I'm getting at was that a lot of people had PS4s. It was the best-selling console of the generation. And so the original PS VR 1 was an additional thing that you could add on to a console that sold a lot of units.
Yeah.
So when the PSVR 2 came out, people were sort of expecting it to be sort of like the same sort of scalable thing, because originally PSVR 2, it launched without controllers, or PSVR 1 without controllers, but you could add them on. And most of the experiences when the PSVR 1 came out used the tracked PlayStation controller.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened. When PSVR 2 launched, it was more expensive than the console
Itself.
Yeah. It
Which
was $50 more than the PS5. And
which is why the price drop makes sense.
yes, because from what we've seen here, the research indicates that the PSVR 2 didn't sell well at all. Sony almost abandoned it. Maybe not quite, but there hasn't been an exclusive title to come out for the PSVR in almost a year now.
But there is Gran Turismo.
Yeah, so Gran Turismo is definitely, I experienced it. I don't have a PSVR 2 yet, but I did a demo of it at a buddy's house, and Gran Turismo is fantastic. Honestly, it's a system seller. I have a PS5 and a very performant PC, but the fact of the matter is that there were very specific things that Sony did not do with the PSVR 2 that was an instant no buy for me. And
What did it not do the most?
it didn't have pancake lenses.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Huge
Because I'd love to do, Pancake and Gran Turismo. Like, moving fast in VR is nauseating in a really fun way. But moving fast in Gran Turismo without Pancake feels like it feels like driving with goggles on. Is like,
For sure. I mean, it's already,
Yeah.
so the lenses in the PSVR 2 are decent to good. The panels, the OLED panels that they have are actually, they look excellent.
that's what they do.
The panels look good.
Yeah.
But the lenses themselves, because I already had a Quest 3 at this point, so trying to...
Seeing how the Quest 3 and the VR 2 kind of like
It's
don't
just a non-starter.
It's just...
You have all this great hardware, and they let it down by the thing that you look the last mile, right?
Exactly. And it seems...
it could be amazing, and they just...
Wonder if they were like, we have a budget, let's be under it, and then let's do a price point cut, and then we'll like offer additional Pancake lens replacements. I don't know.
Well, and also Sony is a hardware company, right? So they're not a software company. They do have software divisions, but that's not how they think about these types of projects. They think about selling consumer electronics. I mean, they do make money off of selling games in the PlayStation Store, but in terms of they're always going to make a profit on the products that they sell. That's why they launched it at $550 price point, and it's why they were so aggressive to not do a price cut, at least for a while, because there were pretty decent price cuts on the original PlayStation VR pretty soon after launch.
Speaking of price cuts, do you think that these price cuts will continue to exist maybe 3 quarters from now? Or is it going to be like...
I think this
they're
is a
gonna build
permanent
it?
price reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, if they're not selling, they got to do something to sell, and they're clearly getting.
There was
Empty the warehouse.
They're not competing with.
There was also
with
some
everybody
reports
else.
that they dropped the price around the time of the PC release and around Christmas, and supposedly during those price drops they sold more units in that one day than they had in the rest of the year. Sony is notorious for putting out devices without a clear long-term goal for them. I mean, they did. So part of the reason why I was pretty skeptical about the PSVR 2 in general was it took a long time to be announced. They didn't announce a lot of titles to support it when it came out, which is always a huge red flag. And also, this was very, very similar to the PS Vita release about 10 years ago, which
sorry,
was also
I just got triggered.
which was also a sequel device to a much more popular device, the PSP versus the PS Vita. And the PS Vita was also too expensive with too many features that it didn't need and some features that it didn't have but definitely needed. And then nobody bought it and they stopped supporting it. And effectively the device just ran out of steam except for enthusiasts. And that's exactly what's going to happen with the PSVR 2. The biggest missed opportunity for the PSVR is that the PlayStation 5 is an incredibly powerful device, and combined with a tethered, very seamless VR experience, it should be the easiest way for people to have a high graphic capable experience. But Sony has so dramatically fumbled that I think it's mostly just going to fade into the ether,
Okay.
which is disappointing.
The other bummer about it is, like, I have a friend that, like, his only entry into VR is the VR 2. And of course he's like basically
"There's no games
soured
for it."
on
Yeah.
VR
Oh, no.
because that's all he's got. That's all he knows. So he's like, I won't even bother buying. He's like, I spent the money on the VR 2, so I'm not going to buy a Quest 3. And so he does it. He just cut himself off from the whole thing. And that's a huge.
I see.
That's definitely disappointing. This next news is sort of tied to everything in the industry, and everything in the industry has been sort of like revolving around this for the last 2 years now. And it seems like it's all coming to a head finally, but nothing official. There's a leaker that focuses on all Valve properties. His name is Gabe Follower. He says that he has sources that are confirming that the Valve Deckard headset is going to launch by the end of 2025 for $1,200. And it will include first-party games or demos. So this one I'm very excited for. We've talked about the Deckard many times on the show. It is leak, so obviously speculation, grain of salt, all that. But $1,200. What do you think?
Not cheap, but if it's coming
Definitely
from
not.
Valve, I'm
Yeah.
excited, right? Like, I feel like, and they've taken a long time. This thing's been leaked for a long time.
Also,
I feel like they won't disappoint.
for sure. And also, it seems from what I've heard and what I've read is that Valve generally sells their hardware at a loss because they make so much money on Steam that the small amount of profit that they're going to make on their hardware devices is completely meaningless.
Just wild.
So it means that we're going to get a lot of value out of the device. I mean, it means it's gonna
Like it's like AVP level stuff
yes,
for half
exactly.
the price. That's
and so I'm guessing it'll have
By AVP, we mean Apple Vision Pro,
yeah
not Aliens versus Yautja.
yeah.
Is it Yautja or Yautja?
Are you talking about like the Predator?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We have to refer to their people as like how they prefer to be
Sure,
called,
yeah.
not just Predators.
I'm sorry, me colonizing over here.
Yeah.
Right. You're doing the work.
It's shadow work. Anyways, we do
AVP
Sorry.
level. AVP level.
just crashed.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm here
crashed
for.
out.
I'm here to make
Totally
these
crashed out.
acronyms make sense.
Yeah, but so what that means is we'll probably get. So we've all been talking about the Play for Dream, the next headset that approaches Apple quality, and most likely at $1,200, this will be that. It'll probably have the fastest SoC that they can get on the market at the time.
What is
system
that?
System on a chip.
System on a chip.
Yeah. And so like the Snapdragon
Yes.
XR2 Gen 2, something like that. It'll probably have the Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2. And it'll probably have 4K micro OLEDs per eye, which approaches the same quality as the AVP. The other interesting things about the Deckard is that supposedly they're going to be focusing heavily on wireless streaming.
Yeah.
From another device,
Yeah.
most likely a dedicated PC.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, and this is the other rumor, is that they're going to launch or at launch
Maybe
of the headset or maybe 6 to 8 months down the line, a set-top box.
A set top?
Like
Wait
a
a minute.
theme.
Are you? What?
Yeah.
Wait, Deckard's gonna get a Steam Deck?
I mean, possibly. There's other rumors about the Deckard that have more elements to the Steam Deck.
Well, there's also heavy rumors about Steam OS, right?
Yes.
That's another thing that like could be part of this, right?
Steam OS.
Right. Well, because a lot of people are like getting tired of Windows. They're like, I cannot wait to because
Right.
a lot of people just have their PC for gaming, and so like
So some of this context goes back to 2013 when Valve launched this initiative called the Steam Box. And what they did was that they partnered up with hardware manufacturers, PC hardware manufacturers, to launch a set-top box that ran the first iteration of SteamOS, and it was supposed to be a direct competitor to Windows, but the license for SteamOS would be free for these hardware manufacturers.
Oh my God.
So that would cut down on the initial cost. And so what they were trying to do was they were trying to make a medium spec console-like device that you could sell as a console, but for PC, but it would run Steam, and it would run all Windows games through a translation layer into that you could play on.
What do you feel is lost in translation to folks who use Macs, right, and have a Steam client on there and are like, I just want Cyberpunk, and they got
The funny thing is, you most likely would not be able to do that.
Right.
yeah, I mean, this gets much more technical in terms of like hardware compatibility and stuff like that.
Because I don't think currently you can run Cyberpunk on a Mac.
I heard I heard back in November that Cyberpunk was coming to Mac OS and it was just on my newsfeed.
Well, that's
and,
because
that's not
Apple they launched their Apple Games support for Mac OS.
Yeah, they are trying to finally like reverse that whole.
Yeah, and it's a whole porting pipeline that allows you to more easily port games to.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the horsepower is there. You just have to write to it.
Oh no, yeah, the horsepower is definitely there. You could probably
So-
run it on an M1, honestly.
Yeah,
But with this specifically, the point of the set-top box is that they want you to be able to have near zero latency high fidelity wireless streaming directly from the headset to the Steam Box. And I'm guessing that the Steam Box will come with dedicated wireless streaming hardware, so that you don't have to purchase a
Wi-Fi
6
or 7 router.
or 7 gigahertz router.
or jump on. Oh my God.
Also, the other thing is that when they ported the Valve Steam Link app to Quest devices, it had support for heavy fixed foveated rendering technology.
Once again, remind me. Heavy fixed foliated rendering sounds a lot like.
So effectively, what this is implying is that Valve has been working on all of these solutions to make wireless streaming to a standalone headset as seamless as possible and as high quality as possible, so that they can make that. So fixed foveated rendering means that when you have a headset on, anything outside of your periphery is rendered at a lower resolution, which increases the floor for rendering hardware.
Yeah.
So
basically, if you're not really paying attention to what's going on in the sides, they don't need to put as much computing power on that stuff.
Yes,
You're
exactly.
focused on what's happening in front of you.
Exactly.
All hands on Deckard.
I would put money on the fact that the Valve Deckard will have eye tracking, and it will rely heavily on eye tracking to increase performance of the set-top box. And it will also use that for, and this is the other thing, is that most likely, because the Deckard is a standalone device, it will be able to run VR games on the headset itself. Now, how well it'll run those devices is sort of up in the air, because as we know, and as David Heaney on the Upload VR podcast or Upload VR podcast always reminds us is that there's no way you could get Half-Life Alyx running on a standalone chipset. It's just physically not possible.
Sure.
I would argue that you don't have to get the PC version running, but you could get a port running that is heavily optimized to run. And most likely what will happen is they'll do the same thing that that Oculus was doing for a while, which is that if you buy the standalone version, you get the PC version, and vice versa.
Sure.
Which makes for great value.
Yeah.
Like, that would definitely sweeten the deal for me.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, the $1,200, like, if the headset is $1,200 and it's an Apple Vision Pro competitor, this is a day one purchase for me. It being a Quest competitor actually is a little bit less relevant to me as a consumer, but I also own a $1,500 spec'd out gaming PC.
Yeah.
It's the set-top box thing is where I'm a little curious, but the last thing that is that is the most curious, and I think sort of brings us all into clear vision, is these controllers right here.
Ooh, those look like AirPods.
So these leaked. These are actually renders from a leak. That
these
somebody
are renders.
So these.
Oh,
so,
right, because the Steam has some kind of like. Oh,
yeah. So these are not the real controllers, but this is what the controllers are going to look like most likely. You can see it's got a D-pad on the left side there.
Yeah.
So the heavy speculation
by D-pad, just to clarify, it's not the X, Y, A, or B. It's the
the plus sign,
which is the D plus sign, which has nothing to do with getting good grades.
You're really breaking it down for us today, Sean.
I thought I'd, speak to some of our critics.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of the other speculation is that the Deckard is also going to double as a Steam Deck for your face.
Gosh.
So it'll be able to run SteamOS. And it has a D-pad because it's going to work with one-to-one control schemes for all of the Steam Deck features.
Whoa.
All right,
let's break that down.
That's huge.
I see Anthony's lit, like, there are lights.
Well, because that means, like, it's basically, okay, so the Steam Deck, if you're not aware, is a handheld console that Steam makes, which is very popular and very good. Everybody loves it. I kind of want one, but I'm not enough of a gamer, but I'm a hardware nerd. So anyway.
I don't have one, but I want one so desperately.
So if you could basically have that, but it's in headsets, I'm assuming you're looking at, even if it's just a 2D version, the same version of the game,
some news about that too.
That would be floating in space, and you have these.
Maybe not just 2D.
Oh, that's interesting. So this would really crack things open. This would be like.
So there is speculation that Valve is working on a rendering pipeline that would allow you to play most to all games that run on SteamOS in a 3D window, floating virtual screen, just like you can with other on the Quest 3. But the games themselves would have depth.
So they just add a stereo layer.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, okay, say I really want to play Donkey Kong, right?
Yeah.
You all know what Donkey Kong is,
yeah,
I hope.
Hopefully.
If you don't, it's okay.
If you know what Kirby is, you know what Donkey Kong is.
Kirby is. If you know what Zelda is, and 2D scroller Zelda in 3D, where like the plants, like on that eagle eye.
Mind you, I think you're going to have to, there are going to have to be some limitations here, because I'm imagining it's games that have a Z depth buffer or a Z axis.
Because it's coming at you. Z axis. I saw what you did there.
Z axis. Anyways, so
Okay, settle
the
up.
thing that's really coming together here is that the Deckard is not just going to be for playing VR games, it's also going to run natively on the device itself all games that are SteamOS compatible.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, if this is what happens, then boy, Meta better watch out.
Yeah,
Like,
they're gonna have to have some answer, because here's the thing: is it like when I first saw the D-pad on the controllers, I knew instantly.
Yeah.
It just makes so much sense.
Ooh,
and I've
that would
actually
be a brilliant
I've had that
idea.
problem before. Is that you can side load. Like I've gotten PS2 emulation running on my Quest 3, and the chipset on the Quest 3 is powerful enough to do PS2 emulation.
Or if you're on your controller.
But you don't have enough buttons on your
Yeah.
controllers. You have to use a third-party controller, Bluetooth controller. I mean, it works well with just like a Xbox Series X or S controller perfectly, actually.
It's so simple. It's almost like they're...
And it's such an elegant solution. Like, I don't know why we haven't already
Yeah,
seen
no,
this.
I mean, it's just, but that's classic Valve, man.
Yeah. I mean, Valve really are people who, they look at a problem and they go, all right, we got this.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's a render. I bet someone like threw that thought. They're like, hey, what about
And
this?
also getting away from meta. That's just a lot of people do not want to support the Zuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're reticent to it ourselves.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I totally understand.
And I think part of it has to do like Valve just being a small team. Like they're I think it's like 40 people that work there, and they're like a multi-billion-dollar company. Like, so that makes them nimble. You know, they don't have that
Yeah.
whole corporate structure to,
Supposedly they have the highest profit revenue
per person
of
employee.
any company in the world. All right. From somebody we love a little bit less.
Bono.
Bono.
Stories of Surrender.
Everyone's favorite lovable rock and roll icon from the 1980s that won't go away.
The good part of this is a feature-length documentary in development to be shown in Apple Immersive. That's the first thing we've heard, right? Like the first feature-length documentary we've heard coming from Apple. Obviously,
From Apple. And I don't even really know if there's any other feature-length
period. Yeah.
immersive things that aren't like tiny little studios that you've
Right.
never heard of.
And especially feature length, like that. This
Especially
will
feature
be a
length.
real test of the medium. Like a lot of people think that like you can't be in headset that long, or that people don't have the attention span or the comfort. Especially on the AVP, comfort could be an issue at say 90 minutes of content. So
I've definitely been in headset for longer than
right,
90 minutes many times.
but I would say the Quest 3 is more comfortable than the AVP, especially with a battery strap.
It's like a concert, right? But you can't leave a concert. You can split your
you can leave
immersive
a concert,
experience. Well, you can leave a concert. If you don't like the concert, you can leave the concert.
You can't leave a
early.
Bono concert.
Yeah. You can.
Armed guards at the doors. Sit down.
let us out.
Oh my god.
The Streets with No Name is a pretty good song, honestly.
Also, Joshua Tree does remind me of all the Joshuas.
So supposedly this feature-length documentary is an adaptation of Bono's memoir Surrender, which came out in 2022. So and it's being shot simultaneously with a traditional flat documentary. So that's actually quite interesting.
That makes a lot more sense.
And we have talked about this a few
quite a few
times.
times. Yeah.
About how we think that it's really expensive to shoot immersive if immersive is the only audience that you're going to go for. So we've definitely talked about piggybacking immersive experiences on existing traditional flat filmic work.
Right. Yeah. Like as a supplemental.
Not just as supplemental. I mean, I supplemental is what you would imagine, you know. But I also think that there is a possible market for shooting both in a similar way, and maybe just taking them in different directions.
So,
I mean, they'll have to in some way.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see. I mean, especially like, are they doing things like? Are you going to see the 2D camera in the immersive dock? Is it going to have more of a behind the scenes feel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of by nature, because since the camera sees all, it's like be interesting to see if they just do 2 takes of everything or do 2 setups or what. But either way, I think it's cool. I think, despite it, obviously, it's kind of just fashionable to give them shit. But I'm still interested in seeing it and interested in what it could be and what it could mean for the medium. I mean, I think there's still so much skepticism around VR 180 as an actual medium that I just want to see more of it get pushed forward and like.
Yeah, same.
This is the hip senior VPs at Apple going, we need to make sure that we figure out how to get these kids on board because
get them, you hook them with U2.
Yeah. It's like, I know a guy, what? His name's Bono.
Let's move on. Okay, so
gosh. So I just found out about this and Viverse, okay. Walk with me back to 2021 when Meta said,
Horizon Worlds. Yeah.
There's this whole new world, the Metaverse. It's a world where all our devices and all of our various platforms and different kind of digital tribes can come together and hang out. And it can be iterated and whatever, you're still part of the club. There's no in, there's no out. It's kind of a beautiful idea. And here we now have Viverse, which
from
is
HTC.
HTC.
Yeah, the phone manufacturer and sometimes VR and company.
Yeah.
With their own take on it.
Yeah.
And I dare say I can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Well, and the difference here is that this is based on WebXR.
Yeah. If for folks who don't know what WebXR is, it's basically open up your browser in the headset. It's a cross-platform JavaScript based like Unity or Unreal. It's like let me rewind the clock back here again to a time when no one knew what WebXR was. And now you're like, oh shit, I can totally hang out in this world.
Well, so
it's like it's
so
like
WebXR is
in front of the store.
What?
No, not
a little horsey, right?
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the good thing about WebXR is that it's available on any device.
Yeah.
You can put it into your apparently not Apple Vision Pro though.
Yeah.
I guess I'm still speaking to our critics.
So you don't have to download a like an APK or a file or an exe. Mm-hmm. It launches into the language when you load it up on your browser and then immediately downloads the assets.
It's a turnkey in a sense, like the bubblegum machines that I mentioned before.
It's interoperable on various devices, and so you don't need to have a dedicated platform to be able to use it. And I think that's part of. Here's the thing, though. So like Horizon Worlds, which is Meta's version of the metaverse, is also available on smartphones and other devices, but you still have to be using the Meta ecosystem. You have to have a Meta account, etc. I'm guessing Viverse will probably have some sort of token system or login that's similarly tied to their thing.
Where like if you log in, you're not choosing one like Google, Facebook, Apple signing the Viverse login.
Yeah, but it's more adaptable. Mm-hmm. So supposedly they're aiming this at businesses so that they can have their own probably like white label version of workrooms exactly, or an immersive space, sort of like what Second Life was doing like 20 years ago, where you had like a Krispy Kreme virtual hangout situation where you can throw virtual donuts at your friend's face, which we all want to do this, don't we?
That's why I bought a headset.
This is definitely why I bought a headset, for advertainment.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
But I mean, the thing is that we do need more alternatives to Meta's ecosystems, and I think Viverse is the first open platform that I've seen that has the performance, a big name with heavy VR chops behind it. Anyways, moving on.
Prima is a new app on the AVP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, new app on the AVP.
It's currently exclusive to AVP.
Yes, and made by these guys use this camera that they made themselves. This company that's called Immersive company, right?
Company, yeah.
So they've created a custom camera that they're shooting with, and apparently now this, it's not a codec, but it's an encoder called Prima that encodes cleaner than H.265. I'm still trying to understand exactly what this means because
seems like it's a finishing codec, right?
Yeah, most things need to be, but it's like the processing engine because like H.265, like the way they've described it on Upload VR is that it's much better versus X.265, but X.265 is a codec, not an encoder per se. So I'm curious exactly what this means, but regardless, it's producing much sharper results. Like apparently this is cleaner than anything Apple is producing,
which is pretty shocking.
Which is really shocking.
Yeah, because the Apple immersive video that I've seen is the best immersive video I've ever seen.
So they're both 8K 90 frames per second.
HDR,
HDR, but the Prima stuff is significantly cleaner. Now apparently this comes at a cost. It reduces the 3D effect. Perspectives are kind of messed up, and maybe there's quite a bit of warping. Like I don't know, there were some comments.
The camera.
Well, yeah, but it could be. Apparently, when you look at it, it looks like it might just be a fancy way of saying AI upscaling because.
Oh, maybe they're doing some AI upscaling like on the headset itself.
That's what somebody floated. Like there were some comments that I read that were like, "Oh, and the guitar person's lips are never moving, but words are coming out of his mouth." So there might be some weird artifacting that's coming out of this as well. Again, we haven't seen it ourselves.
Maybe he's just a ventriloquist.
So this is
maybe he's just a ventriloquist, is what Byron just said. If you did catch that, the AI upscale.
But I don't know, anybody who's done any type of AI noise reduction, AI upscaling, sometimes some weird wobbly stuff happens. So I can see certain details getting lost and maybe muted as if it was plastic surgery.
It's still an iteration that it feels interesting. It's interesting that if you don't know what H.265 is, it's after H.263
and
4, which we don't talk about.
Yeah.
And if you're a video, enthusiast in the early Apple G4 era, where all these were brand new numbers, they were doing something that was way better than Windows. Faster, cleaner is an interesting way to place what they've done here, because I looked at the before and after, and I could see way more detail and fidelity, stuff that maybe isn't quote unquote flattering on a flat screen, but it's more real. It's less process. It's upscaled, which is wait, do I want a washed out, cleaner, a touched up appearance for something that's live?
Well, it's not necessarily upscaled, but it's just, I don't know, if you zoom in and look at, it's one of the biggest problems with VR video is that the codec is just a little, how do you say it? Chunky. There's always these you can see the macro blocking around eyes and high details. Yeah. And a lot of times the other thing that happens is people often sharpen the footage after that. Yeah. And so then it just actually makes that stick out more. So you end up with this shimmery effect that is something that's really hard to fight. So getting away from getting the idea of having a VR or immersive specific and suited to codec and or encoding process is good, because one of the things that happens even with AI noise reduction is it doesn't work that well for VR because it's not respecting the fact that there's two frames.
If you have an artifact in one eye and not the other,
right?
That's not
exactly. If it doesn't do it in concert, then you end up with you get new artifacts.
That come out of it. Digital astigmatism.
So having more technology that is specific to this medium
Like
is great.
It's funny because I actually talked to a buddy of mine, Justin Fecto. What's up, Justin? About I asked him because he's worked in video post-production for he used to work in video post-production for a long time, and I asked him, is there a perspective correct denoising software that exists? And he said no, but if somebody made it, it would break the industry.
It would be huge.
Yeah.
And if anybody could and should do it, I mean, because everybody, like, Topaz is basically already the household name in AI denoising. So if anybody should do it, it should be Topaz. Like, everybody already uses their stuff, so why not, like... But I bet the thing is, everything I've heard about AI and VR is that they don't work well together, and the AI cannot deal with stereo very well. So I think that has a lot to do with it, which is ironic because you do have things like Owl 3D, which will turn 2D into 3D, and it does a pretty decent job.
Yeah.
But I think AI recognizing 3D is a problem. So maybe that's...
Yeah. And supposedly they're shooting this. So this platform, it's only on Apple Vision Pro currently. There's only one video available, and it's with this band you can see on the TV behind us. AJ Lee and Blue Summit. The video itself, it's a paid service. It's $3.99, which I think this is totally reasonable. This
for a high quality performance, I think that is.
And also
$4.
I know that it's very difficult to get people to pay for video content these days because we're so used to getting it in a subscription service or for free.
Yeah.
But this stuff is incredibly expensive to produce.
Yeah.
So please, God, get used to paying money for it again. Anyways,
there's like a 1-minute trailer. That's
but the content itself was shot by a company called The Spatialists. So this was sort of two different companies coming into a partnership together to produce this type of stuff. And that's sort of how these things happen, is that you have one company who knows the tech side and the other who knows the production side, and they come together to Voltron. And I mean, again, I have not seen this in a headset.
It's impressive. It seems impressive. I mean, just the fact that they crafted their own camera is impressive.
Is very impressive.
And all this stuff is supposed to be also compatible with the upcoming, or I guess recently released Ursa Immersive, the Blackmagic Ursa Immersive camera.
Definitely this is definitely a company to keep your eye on, because if they're doing this, that's impressive stuff.
They kind of came out swinging, and so it's
I would say probably should have launched with more than one video personally, but
well, new kid on the block doesn't want to be like, look at all my toys. It's like, I got this one cool thing going on. Come check it out.
A little close to the vest.
I mean, maybe with all this custom software, it's taken them a year to get the post-production done. I mean, like,
honestly,
you just never know. I mean,
I would totally understand that. Been there, done that. You know. All right. It's cool stuff. I definitely want to see more of it. And supposedly it's at a lower bit rate than even...
Was it 30 or 40% more efficient or something like that?
Than X265, which is gonna have to be the way it happens, because if you want to be able to download these ultra high res files, I mean, this is what it's only a 14-minute experience.
That's really...
I wonder how big the file is.
That...
How big would that be if it was X265?
I'm just gonna guess at like 20 gigs.
Holy shit, for 14 minutes.
Something like that, right? Like, I don't really know, because
it's probably
90 frames.
So
but
this is probably about 10 gigs.
Yeah, like one of our episodes, an hour of content at 8K 60 is I think about 80 gigs every time.
Wow.
So just ballpark.
Holy pipe.
Yeah, no, I know. I've downloaded them to do editing, and they're huge. We have to use Drive.
Yeah. So,
all right. Yeah, so that's sort of it for the news segment today. We have something a little bit different. We haven't really tried anything like this before. We're doing a review of The Human Within. And so this is... The Human Within is available on MetaQuest platforms. It is an interactive VR film, right? That's the best.
I guess that's the best way to call it. Yeah, like it's like part game, part film.
Yeah. There's a story. and there's an interactive element that you have to work with in order to move the story forward. But you can change the outcome of the story depending on whether you decide to look left, look right, within the 6 degrees of freedom that they've immersed you in. And I find it interesting as a way of like introducing the idea, and the concept and the story itself is really kind of, to use lack of a better word, meta.
Yeah, it's a very traditional, like modern science fiction. There's like a hacker and a brain computer interface, and it's dealing with surveillance technology. And I'll say this. So it's about 90 minutes long. It uses clips from 2D video, 3D 360 video, what looks to be rendered
like Unity stuff,
Unity environments with interactable video content, where there's a sequence where you first go into this sort of matrix of reality. You're inside the computer type of situation, and there are videos floating around you in a grid, and you can pick up the video and pull it up to your face and it'll start playing. And that was actually, I thought, part of the most compelling part of the narrative. Was it took all these disparate elements of all these things from these movies that you've seen where like, we gotta hack into the mainframe.
Well, or like Mike Nichols, remember Timecode?
Oh my God, Timecode.
Yeah. It was the first.
I love that film. I haven't thought about that since that's like that is a film school staple. That is.
That movie was what? It was shot on video, right?
It was. It
was an interesting 4 channels. You're following 4 or 5 different characters across 4 different points in the movie, and in like a live, ongoing narrative, and it's so rewatchable. It's so replayable in the sense that if you feel like you maybe missed something, you can go back and go, what were they doing? And chapter select. It's also got like a DVD menu style chapter selection. So if you want to replay a scene and change your choice, you can go backwards.
Also,
and it's not boring because there's so much going on and the channels are coming at you.
A big part of this project is that it's a branching choice narrative experience. However, one of my biggest issues with it is that element itself.
Too many choices, or the illusion of choice in the matrix of our consciousness.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's two things. I mean, from my perspective, I would say one of the issues is simply that it's not clear how you're supposed to make the choice. And I personally went through the entire game just taking the defaults because I didn't know how to change the choice.
That's why I mentioned up in front of, if you go back to the beginning of this chapter, depending on which way you look when prompted, you'll steer the story.
It's the only thing in the game that's gaze based, so you don't really know that that's what you're supposed to do.
I also did not know how to trigger the choice events, but I was watching it in the room while Anthony was here and Sean was here, so they told me how to do it. And if they had not told me how to do it, I would not have figured it out, or at least not have figured it out.
I waited for him to get frustrated before I shared.
I looked at my controller and went like, wait, what's happening? Oh God, it already selected.
I wonder if that's a way. And there's a patchable.
And there's also not a time code. There's not a time code. You can't scroll back. You can't scroll forward. So it's not like I could go back without jumping back 15 minutes because I had to go back to the chapters.
This is my other kind of gripe, is that the scene selection stuff, if you're going back, you have to watch the entire scene. Like, let's say you missed the choice or you want to try a different choice, you have to go through the entire video section before the choice is presented. Whereas for me, as somebody like wanting to explore what the different choices would do, I would love those scene selections to just take me back to the choice part, or 3 or 4 minutes before the choice. Kind of like
Bandersnatch gave you that ability to go to a cue point, and then if you miss the cue point because, I don't know, something was going on in the living room, You could easily go, wait, what happened? What happened? And then, redo the...
Honestly, for a situation like this, you should be able to drop in at any point there is a change in perspective.
Yeah.
So like anytime, because there's this reoccurring mini game that is fun the first 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
And then after that, it's just gets more and more annoying and lengthy. And
the characters are yelling at you to go faster.
And it brings the narrative to a halt.
Yes.
It does feel like the immersion is disrupted by its own conceit. I don't know. I just said a bunch of words.
I mean, you're not wrong though. That actually makes total sense, and I agree with what you said. Even if you don't agree with what you just said.
Case in point, because we want more hits than all the other reviews on Human Within, which spoil, by the way. If you want, you can use the controller joystick to control the 3D object, as opposed to kind of having a kind of...
I was doing this the whole
Sean
time.
Sean literally was like, "Oh yeah, you can rotate it with the thumbstick," and I was like,
"Well, you were rotating your entire spine to get under the block." And I'm like, Byron, your headset's gonna fall off.
It's a very similar mechanic as in Half-Life Alyx, which you literally have to do that. You have to rotate your hand. Yeah. So I was just using the same methodology. Yeah. Okay. Despite the fact that it seems like we're saying a lot of negative things about this project, I actually quite enjoyed it.
Yeah. I haven't even begun to become negative. No.
Yeah.
No, I did too. I actually think it's like I think it's like the best of this version of entertainment I've seen, right? As far as choice-based narrative
definitely
stuff. And I think like the blend of video and Unity environment and like how well rendered that was, and the fact that it's 6DoF is really cool.
Remember, we talked about this project when we had the trailer on a few months ago, and we were all, myself included, very skeptical.
To be fair, the trailer, like once I got into the game, it, because I think this actually might be a different trailer.
I think it's the same one actually.
You sure?
Yeah.
Because it felt like watching this. It's like, why is it
actual gameplay?
Why is there all this weird this different types of video? And it's because like this isn't even, well, I don't even know if that's in there, but like some stuff is 360 and some stuff is not 360 and stereo, and so obviously converting everything to a 2D trailer on YouTube, you lose a lot of what is good about the thing. It's really hard to get the feeling of the game across.
There is a je ne sais quoi that does not come through, for sure.
Which we will be dropping in a little bit of gameplay, whatever
footage,
3D capture, so you can get a much better idea of what this.
Because I think having a 3D perspective on what it looks like in headset is a huge selling point for this project. And I know, especially when I first booted it up, I was like, okay, wait a second, I see what they're doing here.
Yeah.
And I said after it was over, I also too said this is probably the best interactive storytelling I've ever seen. Mind you, there are a lot of clunky bits.
A few bugs in the system.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if they're actually patchable, because I feel like they're actually the mini game segments.
I would think stuff like that is, but I don't know enough.
The filmmaking stuff is the stuff that probably, and there's even watching this sequence here, I'm noticing that there are scenes
that we didn't see
or might not even be in the final part.
Alternate
it could be in a branch that we didn't click on or whatever, but I would say the biggest weak spot for me is the actual filmmaking side of it. And of course I'm going to be that critical because that's what I do. But I still think they pulled off.
I enjoyed it. I think in terms of what it seems like they set out to do, it seems pretty successful. I mean, this is a very, very difficult medium. We talked about this in one of our first episodes, in an episode a couple months ago. Interactive storytelling is something that sort of hangs around VR technology and new video mediums consistently. It's always just sort of this albatross. In this way, I think it's more of a benefit. But it's very, very difficult to tell stories in a branching way when it's already difficult enough to write a story as it is, than to have it branch at the same time.
Yeah. I feel like there is a lot of... Word of warning, we got a copy of this from another friend of ours who works for a video game PR company. And his background in video branching storylines, the way we write games, the way games are structured. Like there's a lot in common here, but there's also a lot of relationship that is pretty baked into the story that is like the groundwork. And if you love cyber thrillers, if you love thrillers, this is your jam.
Yeah.
You know?
You said something actually that I thought was really interesting. You compared it to the brain dance mechanic in Cyberpunk 2077, and that's a very apt description. That is a very, very comparable element to it. And in fact, I could see them even possibly taking some influence from those experiences.
Oh yeah, from Gibson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also the brain dances in 2077 where you can scrub forward and backward in time to change your perspective and that type of thing. I would say, so it's $20. It's about 90 minutes.
That's in one straight run through, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not going back and playing with different choices.
Yeah, I had some issues with my headset, so I had to run through the entire thing in one go. I would not recommend doing that. This type of experience should almost certainly be broken up into like 3 chunks. I would have maybe released this episodically, though I don't know if it would have possibly had the same impact. I don't know.
I think it is an all-day pass, an all-week pass.
Yeah, that's a good call. It's $20. I personally,
to own it.
To own it on Meta, I would say it's worth the price.
I see the price of admission is
like in terms of the
Like if you're
amount of entertainment that I got out of it.
If you're into this type of storytelling and curious at all about like blending
narrative and immersion,
it is something interesting. So I think it is worth the money.
It's definitely something that I have never experienced before, in that it used live action footage so effectively in ways that are comparable to ways that similar things have been done in video games.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually.
I've never seen it done with the live action footage in the way that it was done so effectively.
Yeah, these didn't feel like a set of cutscenes like layered together. It felt like things progress in a way where in order to continue feeling, the immersion is, oh God, the words that I said before that I didn't know what I said don't matter. It felt like you were watching a movie, and when it became time to play a mini game, you felt like this was a necessary part of staying immersed within a specific character that is part of the story, part of the relationship that these other characters have around. And because you're in that world with that character, which I can't really talk about because it would be spoiling the entire narrative, I would say I'd give this a 5 out of 5 recommended stars. To like, in terms of like, why do we want immersive storytelling and how does it make sense and what is the point of view? You know?
Yeah.
That's the most interesting thing. That's why I think it really works.
Yeah.
Even with a few hiccups and clunks.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was I think the only things that I think definitely needed to be worked on were some of the filmmaking aspects.
Yeah, if we want to get into nitpicking section.
Yeah, we can go into nitpicks.
If we want to go into nitpicks.
That's your vibe.
Definitely my vibe.
Yeah. No, there were definitely things as filmmakers that we saw that we were like, yeah.
Tell me about it. I want to know.
So for me, it felt very rushed. It felt like they had a couple of days to shoot all this stuff, and they were like, well, that's good enough. Just let's go. Let's move on to the next thing. Like performances. I think the actors did the best they probably could based on, but I'm not even sure there was a director in the credits, and it felt like it really needed direction, like a cohesive thing. There was like kind of sloppy stuff with costuming. There was scenes where
everybody's dressed like they shop at Uniqlo.
Yeah, which
Uniqlo's amazing, and there's zero direction in that store.
Yeah,
that is true.
That's part of the Uniqlo experience.
It is very maze-like.
Unique.
I got lost in the Seattle Uniqlo a couple months ago.
Yeah, I think I went shopping with you too, Uniqlo, and we couldn't find each other for an hour or something. Or was it like H&M? I don't know what it was.
No, it was H&M.
Oh shoot! Yeah, all right. Another directionless.
So it was produced by a company called Signal Space Lab, and in participation with a Berlin-based Studio Arctio, and funded by Meta, the Canada Media Fund, and the Median Board, Berlin Brandenburg, and then it's in German. I can't.
Interesting. So this had like a lot of.
I figured it had to have been co-financed by like a
it definitely doesn't
like
doesn't
government.
Yeah, it doesn't come across as a small budget thing.
Yeah, and that's actually part of why I think it's so effective, is because it's very clear that the budget was decent to good. There are some very, very impressive locations that they shot at, which do a lot to further the illusion that this is real.
Yeah.
I think those elements are impressive. It looks slick. Is a very well packaged, presented situation. It did end sort of abruptly.
It was very much like,
mind you, it is a branching ending. Supposedly, there's like 6 different endings.
I'm gonna.
We got the same ending.
I'm gonna say I got maybe a different ending, but it did feel like I want this to come off as constructively as possible, but you know when you kind of just died in a game, and you're like, oh, I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
You died. That's how I felt.
That's a pretty good way of...
Because I also wanted more story. I was like, wait, if I just... This is going to be interesting if I keep pushing and pressuring and then, oh, I didn't mean to go.
I guess
can we do it over?
It does have that replayability aspect to it built in, you know?
Yeah. But I will say, though, like, if there isn't a more satisfying ending after going through several different branches, then I'm going to be upset.
Oh.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because the ending that we got was very anticlimactic.
This speaks to an interesting problem, I think, in the immersive storytelling language that we're like talking about, is how do we both suspend disbelief and also not cheat the audience, especially if the audience is making choices on behalf of the story or behalf
you have to make sure, and this is you know, they teach entire, I mean, that's why video game storytelling is so very specific and incredibly difficult. You have to make sure that all of your various endings are thematically impactful as well as like thematically resonant. They have to make as much sense for every single different person's version of their story. You know,
it's like writing several scripts and having them all on shooting. And
like how would you ever make a sequel to Mass Effect trilogy that doesn't use one person's, that like finds like a canon ending, you know? And I definitely think the next project from this studio, they'll learn with iteration and
I can't wait to see what else they do.
Right. Yeah, I think you fix a few of the little things, and it's a really great experience.
And hopefully, this was helpful.
Yeah, and I think going forward, we'll probably do more reviews. We might silo certain reviews under Z-axis. Z-axis.
First one's out.
Go check it out. We're really proud of it. Sean gets to tell us all about our favorite standalone, the best. The survival guide for standalone quest titles.
Yeah.
And then my episode, which is coming soon, is going to focus on non-standalone PC and non-gaming experiences, the best of survival guides type of thing.
And speaking of iterations, like we're making improvements on every episode. And so, you know, something you don't like on the first one, just please keep checking back.
And the big thing that's unique about that show is that we've utilized our expertise about inserting spatial 3D stereoscopic clips into, and that is the main focus of the gaming show, is that we have 3D gameplay while we're doing the...
There's a picture-in-picture of me playing everything that we reviewed, and we threw that together really quickly, by the way. I'm impressed how, you know...
The second one was a little bit more iterative.
Yeah, we keep making improvements, but I think showing these things in 3D just beats any 2D thing, even if it's in 360. And
we think it's the best way to show
you get a real flavor of
VR gameplay footage.
Yeah. Like
so we'll probably be doing more reviews on that. We also have some ideas for some like tech related stuff that could be in under Z-axis as well.
Yeah.
So please go check those videos out. And all right, that's it for the Stereoscope podcast number 12. See you guys later.
Peace.
Peace.